Gary, how you doing?
Good.
Good to have a fellow Gary
I know.
on the podcast.
1 hour as well.
Well, that's it's the only way to go.
Yeah.
It's the only way to go. Obviously, been back and forth for a few weeks trying to get you on. This really piqued my interest when I seen it, and I think it's something that people will probably get a lot out of with the combat journal that you've written. But before we get into the book and why you've done it, obviously, career-wise, this kind of stemmed from you being in the Navy and kind of a chain of events from there. But how did you get to that point? What made you want to go and join the Navy?
Really just a kid that didn't know what he wanted to do when he left school.
Yeah.
I'd done not bad. I got enough grades to get into uni. But I just didn't know. I think, when you leave school at 17, 18, you're too young to determine what course you're then going to study for 30, 40 years of your life. So, I was definitely in the bracket that I just didn't know what I wanted to do. There was a Navy diver in the village. Navy divers have got a bit of history in Tarbert.
Right.
Loch Fyne's quite a deep loch, so they used to do a lot of their training there. So when I was growing up as a kid, the Navy was in the village quite often. You would go and get glow sticks for your weekend off them and stuff. And then he then became a friend, but he was a Navy diver at the time. My mum took me up to visit him, have a cup of tea as quite a shy kid, like 15, 16 I think at the time. And he just showed me photos on his laptop of jumping out helicopters and blowing stuff up. So I thought it's like every boy's little dream to be like James Bond. So that was me sold. Yeah.
Wow. It is probably such a niche job as well, because there's maybe quite a lot of interest in it, but there's probably a lot of difference from people being interested in it to actually going
exactly. It's got quite a big fail rate as well. So a lot of, especially when I went to join the Navy, you go into the careers office in Glasgow and in Queen Street, if it's still there, I think. And they asked me what I wanted to be, and I said a Navy diver. And he says, "Oh, you do realise it's a hard course, so have you got a backup plan?" I says, "No." I says, "A Navy diver, and that's it. If it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be." But I only had one goal, and that was it.
And is the course as intense as they made out to be, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's like any challenge, really, isn't it? But it's all subjective. But I think that it is harder than your standard course. If you look at the numbers, I think 55 people went into my intake numerous times, and I think 5 came out of it and passed the full course. So quite a big fail rate.
Yeah.
So good sense of achievement after it.
Yeah, definitely. And at that point, when you then obviously you come out your training and you're qualified and you're ready to go, what did your day-to-day look like? What was the job entailing for you?
So I went straight to sea. So as a Navy diver, you're not sea based at all. You're predominantly shore based. There's 4 bomb disposal units around the UK.
Right.
So from Liverpool to the Shetland Islands, there's Northern Diving Group, which is based at Faslane. And then you've got the southern teams, and then London's got their own team.
Okay.
So we covered bomb disposal units, or that's our main job as Navy divers, and underwater engineering on the base. But they've also got subcontracted companies that come in and do that. So, but we spend a limited time at sea. So my sea time is 13 months. It's usually around a year to a year and a half.
Okay.
And I was based in a ship called HMS Grimsby, where we done one deployment out to the Arabian Gulf, and after that deployment, that was me shore based in Faslane, pretty much sort of not your usual 9 to 5, but it was within the 9 to 5 hours.
Right. Okay.
And that was when I was working. Yeah.
And did you enjoy it at that point? Was it did it kind of give you the fulfillment that you thought it was going to?
Anything that I work at that sort of is always a challenge. It's always a sort of a learning curve. I think I always get something out of it. It's when I feel that I'm no longer learning that I take my foot off the gas and need to move on to something else. Yeah.
And at what point then did you then start to feel not a struggle as such, but there was a kind of less of a support element that you would probably have required?
Well, I mean, when you're a Navy diver based in Faslane, you're going to get forgotten about anyway.
Right.
To an extent. A lot of the courses, or most of the courses, are held down south. So a lot of the guys down there get priority.
Yeah.
So you do end up in your own little bubble in Faslane. So the promotion element, and that was sort of why I decided to leave the military in the end. Promotion was just a little bit too slow for me.
Okay.
You're seeing people that were in intakes behind you getting promoted ahead of you.
Yeah.
And it was a little bit of a frustrating frustrating time. So I just decided, like, a lot of the guys that I knew that were started off as Navy divers had now left, and they were in the offshore oil and gas industry. So that was definitely a little push to sort of join them and make more money and more time off, really. Yeah.
And was there any regrets on your part coming out of it and trying something else?
Nothing at all. I think looking back on it now, I'm really glad I did. I think if the promotion element was a lot different, maybe my career would have been different. I would have sort of stayed in and went up the ranks. But I was glad the decisions I made in the end.
Yeah, to move. And see, from a promotion point of view, obviously I'd imagine the armed forces are slightly different from your day-to-day jobs. What is that kind of timescale that you could wait for promotions between?
How long's a piece of string, really? They do have sort of a basic list, you know, and I think it depends where there's potentially a clog in the train. So if you get in the military, you start as able rates, and then you move up to a leading hand, then a PO, and then a chief, as your basic sort of promotion train.
Yeah.
But you'll always get clogs in that train, wherever you'll maybe get loads of leading hands that just don't really want to get promoted.
Yeah.
So they stay and clog the system. So anything below that clog, there's always a long delay.
Yeah.
But if you manage to get past that, you can sort of go quite far in your career. But and with the divers, this sort of the demand to the job goes a lot higher when you go above a leading diver.
Right.
So the clog is very much at the leading hand level. So from able rate to your first promotion, you'll spend a little bit more time there until you potentially get past that. And if you're still keen to get promoted, you can fly sometimes.
Yeah. It's that domino effect, I suppose, isn't it?
Exactly,
if you get people there that are
definitely
not willing to go anywhere and sit in their role.
Yeah.
I was curious, and this will probably be a pure daft question to someone who has done this role like yourself, but is there a feel element with it? Like when you're going into like your first kind of tasks or roles and things, and you're out of training, and
I mean, I think I look at that with anything I do, really. You know, even in the offshore industry, the learning curve's so steep there. It took me probably every day for 5 years. When my dive plan would come in, I would get a little bit nervous. I would get that feeling of, what if I fail, you know?
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what I do. I think, you know, you come in here today and I think, oh, what if I do rubbish? What if I potentially fail in what I'm wanting to do? But so it was just another potential failure element to your life, I guess. Yeah.
And is it one of those things that when you're given a task or something to carry out, so you then just get into a zone when you're in the water and you're just getting on with the task at hand? And
I mean, there's like quite tranquil elements of being under the water and not having the noise of life around you. So I think I noticed that first, and then you're like, all right, okay, I'm under the water, and what's my job? But first of all, it's quite nice to actually just be under there. Yeah. Block out the noise, the voices.
Nobody to give you any trouble. Or
exactly.
Yeah. I think I'd quite like that, to be fair. And then obviously the combat journal. What prompted you to do that? What was the idea behind it?
So it was really just my own journey with anxieties and being really closed as a person. And my journey sort of stemmed as having bad panic attacks when I was a kid, to then growing up with a lot of anxieties, to then only really dealing with that sort of late 20s going into my 30s. So it's been a long process, and it's been a process that I'm now reflecting on quite a lot. But that's sort of what got me into at least researching about positive psychology, positive psychotherapy, and then looking what was on the market, then getting quite disappointed that there was methods out there for people to help themselves, but not a lot of people knew about them. Yeah. And these journals, these mental health focused journals that was on the market that claimed to do these things that they had sort of, like say that they claimed to do, they fell short every time. They had great incentives, but I think they fell short and sort of rather looked at good ideas, but not follow through with them. Really. Yeah.
And from a journaling point of view, did you notice a massive difference when you started putting things down?
Unbelievably, yeah.
Really?
Almost night and day.
Right.
And it was so quick that, I was quite taken back by how the changes, and it was not so much the anxieties, that was a sort of longer process of healing, but just how closed of a person or how willing I was to open up after journaling was, almost night and day.
And did you have, was there trigger points for you in your life that kind of prompted not the panic attacks, etc., but probably encouraged the closure and not opening up and keeping things to yourself and having that kind of siege mentality?
Yeah, I think it's probably, going back to like you were saying about failure and potentially like the control element, when you go into maybe my Navy diving training, you know that you're in control of the sort of end result, or any challenges. If I go out in a long run, like you're in control of that end result. Yeah. Whereas sometimes if the stresses of life pick up and you're necessarily not as much in control as you would like, the anxieties would maybe creep in. That sort of failure element would maybe sort of take more control then.
It's interesting because it's probably, as much as you're looking at it from the point of view of your life and then going into the armed forces, etc., it's probably relative to any job or any kind of anybody in a similar position.
Definitely, yeah. And I think that's why, I was speaking to, it was a military radio station, and the producer asked me, did I ever regret, going into the Navy and going down that career path, rather than when I'm sort of getting into my 30s and then realizing I've got a passion for psychology. Did he asked me, did I ever regret not going to uni and maybe studying psychology? And I said, no, absolutely not, because that was my path and it's given me a story. I could be 34 like I am today and just qualify in uni and then being a 34-year-old qualified psychologist with no life experience. Yeah. But now I'm 34 with a passion for psychology, but I've got a good story behind me to sort of pass on and hopefully share that knowledge in something like Combat Journal. Yeah.
And I suppose it's that life experience as well, because when I was doing a bit of research and I'd seen when you were, I think you were 17, 18, you lost one of your friends, and from kind of reading the articles that you'd done on that seemed to have like a really profound effect on you at that age.
Yeah, for sure.
As well, and there was the issue around being like a pallbearer, etc., and the Navy didn't want you to go in case you didn't come back. But at that point, did you feel as if you maybe wouldn't come back if you had went home, or where was your head at that point?
Again, going back to the failure thing, that was what I'd set out to do. So I think in my eyes, it would have never been something that I wouldn't have completed. But I was never given that option, so I guess we'll never know. But growing up in a village, especially a small village like Tarbert, it's a typical West Coast village that nobody really talks very openly about their personal life issues or anything. So I grew up with a lot of anxieties, but also being very closed. And my friend Alistair, throughout most of my childhood, he was that person I would go to talk to if we would talk about the most random of subjects. Then when I did get the news that he had passed, it was almost like somebody had removed that one element that you did cling on to being quite like as open as you wanted to be. And then somebody had took that person away, so then you felt as if, well, even if you did want to be open, that person was no longer there anyway, and you didn't know how to be open to anyone else. That was what manifested, just being more closed and sort of locking myself off in that sense.
And did you see, looking back on that period and your period in the armed forces, with the hindsight that you've got now, and obviously you've written the combat journal now, do you feel that would have made a massive difference to you at that point if you'd had that sort of support level at the time?
Yeah, 100%. I even started writing letters. So I think I was sitting in the Navy bar on base one day, I think I remember. And because, like I say, I'm from quite a small village, and you could almost hear the whispers from the other end of the country. Potentially like, why didn't he come back for the funeral? I thought he was meant to be one of his best friends. And even though that might just be, voices in my side. I could still hear them. They still felt real to me. So I thought the only way to maybe help Alistair's parents or his girlfriend at the time would be to maybe write them a letter. So in a way, I was kind of doing expressive writing back then anyway. I wasn't doing it as much to get the effects out of it or the positive effects, but in a way I was attempting to do that because I didn't have anyone else to talk to. So yeah, massively it would have helped.
Yeah, because I suppose as well in that situation as you're just describing, you probably have worse conversations in your head based on what you think other people are saying about a scenario that you don't even know. And obviously in Tarbert, nobody might have been saying that, but in your head, you're already 10 steps ahead and having that chat. See, from an armed forces point of view, obviously it may be different now, but back then, if you were to go in and kind of look at it, what would you change from a support point of view? Because you've lived that experience of working.
The conversations that I've had with the military, mainly the army at the time, they always asked me how I would quite like to integrate something like this in. And I said during the joining process would be one of the main aspects or main avenues I would look at. And it's mainly because you have kids that are sort of 17, 18, joining for minimum 4 years of your life. It's not like going to uni and you're doing a uni course that you can drop out at any point. 4 years is quite a long time for anyone. So 17, 18, you're signing 4 years of your life away, and then you're just getting thrown into being in the military. You do get briefs, but nothing on mental health that you didn't at the time. So yeah, I think that process would be quite good, that you, after signing 4 years of your life away, you maybe get sat down, you get told about the benefits of journaling, presented with something like Combat Journal, and then also taken through the steps of like I say, the benefits of it and the effectiveness of it, and just highlighting that they can talk to other people, but if they can't talk to other people, then they can talk to themselves through journaling. Yeah,
and I suppose it's such a impressionable age as well, that kind of 17, 18, and you think you know the world, but once you step into it, I mean, it would be hard enough. I found at that age hard enough stepping into like a normal job that you could quit after a month if it wasn't working out. But if you're in a situation where you're signed for 4 years, you need to make it work. There's no real choice here. But I suppose having that support would maybe help with the decision making at the very beginning, right? Because it was probably the same for yourself. When you go in and you sign up, you're just thinking, I want to be a diver, but nobody's really told you about the potential impacts or how you're going to feel. But I just wonder if that would make a kind of different choice for a lot of people if they were sitting.
I think it's creating these good habits young as well. Because, looking at the figures, and again, that's why one of the reasons that the military are so sort of behind the curve in taking on a lot of mental health tools, is the fact that the numbers say that the militaries get better mental health than civilians, and it's mainly that people don't actually realise they've got more issues until they're no longer part of that unit, that companionship, when they leave the military, and then those feelings come rushing to the surface because they've never dealt with them, and it's then the problems become apparent. But the Navy see that as well, or the military see that in general as, well, they've left and then they've got mental health problems, so it's not our fault. Whereas if they had these healthy habits early, i.e. do something like the joining up process, then by the time you spend 4 years, 12 years, you're full 22, you could leave knowing that if you are going through anything, you can always turn to a notepad and pen.
Was there anything from your time that you wish you'd kind of knew about before you joined?
No, I don't think so.
No.
No, I quite enjoyed it. It was good. It was like a learning curve. It was. I was a very quiet kid, like I say, when I went to with my mates and sat down and looked at photos on his laptop.
Yeah.
He describes me as a very shy kid, and he says when I left the village and came back after my training, even though I was still, in my eyes, a very quiet, like sort of closed off kid. Yeah, he noticed a big difference in me, and it was mainly sort of typical Navy traits maybe creeping in.
And I suppose it's that whole you would have been right out your comfort zone.
Yeah.
With the training and you just need to get on with it, don't you? It's just one of those.
My mum's a bit of a dictator, so
right.
The whole tidy, like make your bed and stuff like that. The whole militant side of things, polish your shoes. I mean, my mum doesn't make me polish my shoes, but if I had shiny shoes, she probably would do. Yeah. But yeah, so that side of things didn't come too much of a shock to me. You know, I get my work ethic off my dad. My dad's a good worker, so I knew the work element. I was always gonna give it my all. So nothing too much came as a surprise, but like I say, it was just a nice challenge.
Yeah. What do you think what was the biggest learning you took from the experience of being in the Navy?
How easy the basic training was for me, and then how strong and how much of an impact resilience can be during my Navy diver training. Like you say, that was the intense one, and mainly physically intensive, but also they would try and break you down mentally as well. Yeah. So mental resilience plays a massive part within that, and again, that's something that I've taken into my adult life and overcome sort of other sort of hurdles along the way. So yeah, I think realizing how key a part resilience has to play in most things. Yeah. And
from on the resilience side of things, was that a harder thing to build than the actual physical aspect of the training?
I think I was quite lucky to learn that I had quite good resilience anyway. So it just highlighted that to me, but also, you could see how important it could be also to build upon that resilience. You know, for somebody who maybe doesn't have what they maybe would see as being much of resilience, or maybe if it's there and they've just never noticed it like I was. But yeah, I would say it's definitely a key element. Yeah.
I suppose as much as you're saying it can be quite tranquil at times, I'd imagine it could be quite a lonely place at times as well, because there's no one you can talk to.
And especially if you're going through maybe a breakup or just a disagreement, you know, a row with your family or anything, you're at the bottom of the sea for, I mean, nowadays it's usually 6 hours I'm down there for. So yeah, if there's something playing in your mind, it's
and
that's
the thing as well, because it's 6 hours is a long time. To be how far down you would be, but
you wouldn't expect somebody to sit at their desk for 6 hours without a break.
No,
you know, but we'll be 6 hours down the bottom of the sea working away,
and that's a long time to not be talking to anyone.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're continuously talking to your supervisor, and the other diver that's there. You know, there's a continuous conversation going on. So sometimes it's quite nice when you do get a bit of peace and they don't talk. Get a nice easy job and you just look at a gauge, but it's a lot of the time you are. Like say, it's been on a building site, so there's continuous chatter going on between sort of cranes and everything, really. Yeah,
that blows my mind.
Yeah.
There's someone hundreds of feet down just having a chat.
Yeah, a construction site, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man. What about if you were speaking to someone, as you described yourself, 16, 17, at that point of, I want to go and join the Navy or the Army or the Air Force, what would you say to them advice-wise based on your time there?
I would say it's a great learning curve, a great stepping stone. They might actually grow a love for the military services. You know, they're pretty good. Yeah. But I would say put in the research and look to what you really want to do, because just like going to uni, you know, you might do an apprenticeship in the military and then realize that you don't like it, or it's something that you didn't foresee for yourself. But also you go in there young, you can be like me and leave at 21 and still have a full career at something else. But yeah, I would always just promote talking as well. Yeah. You know, if you're ever get any concerns, worries, talk to somebody, ask questions about everything. Yeah. And every day's a school day.
100%. And I'm just, surely it would be good if you've got a group of 10, 15 girls or boys that want to join, to get them in front of somebody like you and have that, because that's a very different Q&A, because you've lived that experience and you've come out and obviously you've created this off the back of it, so you've seen both sides. If I was that age, or if my son or my daughter was that age, I would rather they spoke to someone in your position and made a choice off the back of that. But have you engaged the military about using this, like, going forward? Or?
Yeah, I spoke to them. I mean, like anything, it's sort of, it comes like buses, you know, everyone's super excited to hear about it.
Yeah.
They've went through it, loved it, and then tumbleweed, you don't hear anything.
Yeah.
The Army's a lot more keen than the Navy at the minute. I'm attending a military conference next Wednesday down in Colchester.
Brilliant.
So yeah, I'll certainly be sort of promoting it as much as I can down there, talking to certain people. But let's say the Army is definitely keen on it, looking at obviously potential budgets, but I think they are recognising they need to take on something like this.
Yeah.
Apparently the RAF has already took on a journal.
Right.
As far as I believe, it's a blank journal. And they've actually mandated it as well, which I've got my own feelings about. But yeah, it's good to see that they are starting to acknowledge mental health as a problem, and they are looking to take on tools and sort of teach people the importance of mental health.
So by mandate it, is that a requirement then that would need to be done rather than people choosing?
Exactly, yeah. And the guys that I did ask sort of about that in the RAF, they said that it was just not getting used for what it was meant to be used for, and people are just writing shopping lists or random things in it when they know that it's going to be inspected, because that's all they're looking for, is the fact that they're using it. So, yeah, it's sort of defeating the purpose almost.
Yeah, because I suppose you're then getting people that are just writing for the sake of writing, and there's...
Exactly, yeah. I mean, and it kind of goes to, you know, a lot of people ask me if there's a time frame around combat journal. And I said that I set out initially with 6 months. You know, your usual mindfulness journals are, for some, like, they always do 90 days, 3 months, which I think getting people to commit to 4 journals a year is quite a lot. So I doubled mine and put mine as a 6-month journey. Right. And again, even to a year, you might not even need to buy 2 a year, but it's a lot more acceptable than 4. Yeah. But yeah, I actually completely removed the time frame around it. Okay. Because I thought, you know, I can only promote something that I done. I didn't work on it every day. It was when I needed it. Which would roughly be around about 6 months. Yeah. But yeah, even still, you know, I wouldn't promote somebody to do something I wouldn't do myself. So it wasn't an everyday process. So like you say, the mandating thing, I don't think would work. Yeah. No, I see where you're coming from. And have you had feedback from anyone who's used it? Yeah, like, always sort of takes me back, you know, and gives me that little pat on the back when I get some nice feedback. And again, from ex-military people to just everyday normal people. Yeah. Guys, girls, doesn't really matter. But yeah, I've had quite nice feedback, and that's off both psychologists as well and users. Yeah. Which must be quite reaffirming for you as well you've had that support to other people out there. I mean, the imposter syndrome has been real. Like, oh really? Yeah. Almost every day. Wow. So yeah, if you get somebody to tell you you've done a good job, that sort of just eases that imposter syndrome down a little bit. And again, having psychologists look over it, you sort of worry yourself that they're maybe gonna turn around and tell you it's useless or it's not gonna work, or I'm not qualified to do that or something. Yeah. Do you still have that feeling now, even though you've got people who have given you feedback on it? And I mean, I think for a little while I will still get that feeling, especially, you know, the more people that look over it. You never know. Not everyone's gonna. It's not gonna be everyone's cup of tea. But I would still quite like those reaffirmations sort of come through and tell me I'm doing a good job. I'm always amazed by the guests I've got on, and that's a common theme. With the, I mean, you've passed one of the harder training courses in the armed forces, and you brought out a book, and in your head you've still got that. Yeah, I mean, I'm always going to be that way, to be honest. Yeah, I think it spurs me to sort of do a lot better as well. If I thought, oh, it's perfect and it's amazing, and it doesn't care what somebody says, it's I believe I've done a good job, then I don't think I would be going down the sort of right avenue to do the help that I'm looking to achieve. Whereas if I'm worrying that, maybe it might not help everyone that I want to help, I'll be a little bit more disappointed in myself. Whereas if I knew it could help a wide spectrum of people, and I still get the sort of people reaffirming that, then I'm gonna sort of, it's gonna give me a smile at the end of the day. 100%. And are you always that way with anything that you want to kind of improve on what you've done? I mean, even like when I'm filling out the journal, I'll take little notes of how I'd like to change it.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I love that. I love that. You are now working in the oil industry, still diving, but I'm assuming it's a different type of role from what you done in the Navy.
So it's a lot deeper stuff.
Okay.
So they call it saturation diving.
Right.
Which was developed, I think, sort of around the 60s.
Okay.
And if you know anything about diving, you'll understand that if you go scuba diving, say to 15, 20 meters, you go down there for a certain length of time. You can spend so long there, and then you come up to the surface.
Yeah.
If you spend a little bit longer there, then you have to incur decompression stops. So you have to maybe stop at 6 meters or maybe 3 meters. If you were then to go down to 30 meters, then the bottom time that you would have would sort of decrease, or the decompression stops that you would have on the way up would increase. So they developed a practice, like I say, I think it was in the 60s, which was called saturation diving. What they did was they pressurized just to the same depth you'd be diving, the equivalent sea depth. And you lived at that pressure. So technically you were saturated in the gas that you were breathing.
Right.
So when you're scuba diving, when you get what's called the bends, it's small bubbles of nitrogen that sort of go in the bloodstream.
Okay.
When you come up too fast, those small bubbles can't diffuse out your body. So what happens is they flow along your bloodstream. They go to usually your joints, and they get trapped there. And that's why you sort of bend over.
Right,
That's
okay.
why it got termed, it coined the bends. So that's the same thing with us. Even though we're not breathing air, which is nitrogen and sort of oxygen, we breathe helium and oxygen. So we breathe and talk with a squeaky voice, like you're sucking a helium balloon, but it's a lighter gas.
Right.
So
Okay.
it's a lot easier compressed.
Right.
But yeah, we've got little bubbles of helium flowing through our body.
Right,
So
okay.
we live at pressure for maximum 28 days. So depending on how deep we are, depends on how long the decompression is. So on average, 100 meters is 3.5 days.
Okay.
So 28 days by law we can stay in there, minus 3.5. So around about the 24 mark, 24 and a half, you'll start your decompression if you're doing a full time. So you usually never work to the minute 28, it's 27 and a half days, something like that. But you're usually about 3 days, 4 days decompression at the end.
And how hard is that to get the body used to?
I mean, most of the time you don't really get too much time to
think about
sort of acclimatize. You're down there, you get asked to go diving, and that's it. So your body, you do have sort of what they call an acclimatization period, and that's dictated by figures, by industry standards. Say an hour, you get down to pressure, you have an hour stabilization,
right,
and then you go diving. So you don't get given that much time.
And when you're down there, what kind of things are you then being asked to do?
Anything really.
Right.
The best way to describe that is like thinking of an underwater janitor, like
Right,
your janitor
okay.
in school.
Yeah.
He does the radiators, he does the doors, he does anything that needs done. But is he qualified for it? Probably not. It's the same as us. We're not necessarily qualified for it, but if we've got to fill some sandbags with some shovels from the seabed, we'll do that. Or if we've got to build a pipeline, we'll do that, So it's just anything really. Yeah.
What's the furthest you've dove?
191 meters.
Wow.
And that's pretty much the deepest that the North Sea goes.
Yeah.
It's like a field called the Magnus.
Right.
And that's 191 on the bottom.
And when you get down that far, does the mind start to wander a little bit? Like,
nah, not really. I mean, it's quite, as long as there's visibility, you're fine. If you're down that deep and it's dark, you would maybe think a little differently. But Magnus is not too bad.
Right.
You get some big giant monkfish at Magnus. They're pretty big. Right. So they've not been disturbed for years, like dinosaurs.
That would give me the full fear.
Yeah, they could definitely eat somebody my size.
Oh man, what about? Obviously, it's quite a challenging role, but it must be quite a rewarding role as well, both for what you're doing just now and what you've done previously. What have been your kind of real high points in your career diving wise?
Oh, I mean, I don't know if I'd really look at my diving career's high points. Nah. I mean, the Navy diving, probably the course. Yeah, it's definitely a high point. Getting to the level of diving that I am now, high point. But it's just an awful weird industry to work in. You know, you don't get treated very good.
Right.
You realize that you're just mainly a number. Some companies are better than others.
Yeah.
You know, nowadays, like say the company that I work for, they are trying to do little things to make like creature comforts a little bit nicer. But yeah, it's sometimes a weird industry to work for. You know, you don't get told anything.
Right.
You don't get told when you're going to work, when you're coming home from work.
Right, okay.
Everything's kind of kept until very much last minute. So planning your life's quite difficult.
Yeah, I was going to say it doesn't really give you much scope to.
Nah, but then again, I only go away 3 to 4 times a year. For a month at a time, so you do have quite a lot of time off.
And do you prefer that routine of the kind of short bursts and then?
I think so. I could never just sit and do a normal 9 to 5.
Yeah.
I like the fact that I get paid decent. I have a lot of time off.
Yeah.
Well, I did have. And then I can do whatever I like. I can go traveling. I can sort of plan a good fitness event or something.
And when you're traveling, are you in the water when you're away, or are you like, nah, can I think of anything worse?
I mean, if I went somewhere nice, like I done my PADI open water when I was 11 in the Seychelles.
Nice.
If I went back to the Seychelles, I would do some diving. But, I certainly don't rush. I certainly don't rush in the like. I love the sea. I love surfing. I love sort of being in the sea. But I wouldn't be caring about diving if somebody sort of offered it to me.
Too much like a job, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah, I get it. What about, and obviously you touched on it a little bit there, if you were able to do it and there was no kind of barriers to it, what would you change about the industry that you feel would make an improvement to it as it is?
Better leaders for a start.
Yeah.
It's one of these industries that you get promoted, but they never ever put you on leadership courses.
Right.
And a lot of the people who are being promoted are through who they know, not what they know. So a lot of these people, which, you know, it's only from what I've found, is they've got massive insecurity issues because they necessarily don't feel that they deserve that job because they've been handed it. So then, like I was saying with the sort of secrecy thing, is knowledge is power. So the more knowledge that they have, the more that they feel can justify their role, because they know through their insecurity issues that you probably know more than them type scenario. So I would definitely allow people to be promoted that deserve it more than just who they know. And then also put those people on practical leadership courses. Yeah,
to try and get that experience of actually being a leader.
Yeah.
And for anyone, maybe not obviously wants to be in the military, but for anyone who has an interest in diving, what advice would you give from that point of view, taking away the kind of military aspect of it, if they were looking at that as a career path?
I mean, it's a decent career to have. It's one of these careers that you could work your socks off in the beginning and reap the rewards at the end.
Yeah.
But then again, you might never reap the rewards. You might never get to that end point.
Yeah.
Like I say, it's a very strange industry, so get used to sort of failures along the way, rejection. Certainly from companies, but a lot of perseverance sort of goes a long way. But again, it's just another job that's not the standard status quo of life. You can sort of offer people these peculiar different jobs, and it gives them more of an option. Like say maybe they'll decide they don't want to go to uni at 17, 18 and go down the military route or offshore route. It's a good one.
Yeah, definitely. What about, have you had any kind of real bad moments while doing the job, or kind of injuries or anything like that, or points that have kind of made you think about? Yeah,
a few. The saturation diving, there's a few instances when you've been like, if you were not in that sort of, if you were maybe an inch to the left, an inch to the right, you could have went down completely differently. A few injuries that could have potentially happened. Yeah. Touch wood, I've always came out like scathe free. Yeah. But a few instances that you think that was quite hairy. Yeah. And you realise that you are putting yourself in more of a danger than the average person. Yeah. How do you kind of deal with that though? Because it's, if you're coming back up from a dive and you're sitting going, if I'd have been 2 inches to the right there, that could have been catastrophic. But how do you kind of cope with that? I mean, there was a good saying we used to say in the military, and we would mainly refer it to people who were complaining about their job, you know, if they were saying, oh, like you're sitting drinking cups of tea while I'm polishing the deck or something, you would always say to them, well, pick your chance, pick your branch, take your chance. And I guess you could kind of use that in the same element as, you know, I chose this job. So, you know, I'm not going to sit in my bed and wonder about the safeties of it if I've chose it in the first place. So yeah, I guess, like you say, I've chosen that path. So you sort of deal with it. Yeah.
And have you, in the oil industry as well, you hoping to utilise the journal
again
within that as
in
well?
Conversations. There's a couple of companies that have sort of bought into it already. So I'm quite keen to hear their feedback and push it, because the military's another one that massively could use it. I was quite worried again when I told people what I was doing. It took me about 4 to 5 years to develop, so it was a long time of not really telling people what I was doing. But
why were you worried? What was the
again, like you say, it's a bit of a strange industry, so if they maybe see that you're doing something out with the industry, they'll think, oh, well, you think you're too good for us type scenario. And there's always somebody ready to stab you in the back and take your job. So if they see that you're maybe doing something else, they'll maybe think, well, oh, I'm trying to get my nephew in this job, so I'll tell the office that you're no longer in it. So mainly those things.
Right.
And then, but when I started getting them printed, I told some of the guys, one of the guys that I was closer with, and then before you know it, more people. But the more people that knew about it, the more people that then approached me to tell me about their issues and their problems at home and how they've suffered quite badly. So that took me back a little bit. I wasn't expecting that as much. And again, just highlighted the problems that sort of we have as guys in general, but just the reluctancy to talk and open up is massive.
I suppose it'd be quite an intense job with that time on, time off, if you've got family problems at home and you're having to park that for 20 odd days. And
you can't take a mental health day offshore. You can't take a sick day, really. Well, you certainly can't in the chamber when you're dying, because there's only 6 of us there.
So there's no real replacements.
There's no replacements. So we can't take a day off. We can't take a mental health day. You know, if your family member passes away, you're 3.5 days from the surface. So you need to make that decision. Do I just stay? Because if I say I want to get out, well, there's 2 other guys that need to come out as well. And if they're relying on that paycheck, then maybe I'll need to just sort of grin and bear it and sort of deal with it when I get out. Or if it's sort of early, I can maybe come out and it might benefit them in the end. So it's decisions you sort of got to come across when you sort of do that job, really.
Which is hard, because there's probably very few careers that you would be faced with those kind of choices of
exactly.
It's not just your pay. It's affecting it's somebody else's, and for all you know, that'll be held against you for months down the line.
Divers aren't very good with their money. Like, as fast as they earn it, they like to spend it. So if it comes to buying a fast car or paying your tax bill, the fast car usually always wins.
What's the hope then for the next, let's say, 12 months for the Combat Journal? What would your ideal...
Ideally, like, my goal would be to be putting in regular enough orders from my end that people are then obviously buying them up on the other end. That would be my ideal goal. If I can get that to happen in 12 months, I'll be super happy. But within that, it's just increasing the visibility and getting people to know about it, really.
And if someone wants to buy it, on your page, is there a link? Or
so you can find me on social media, combat.journal. You can buy it through the buy button there, or on my website, combat-journal.com.
Brilliant. This has been amazing, mate. It's so interesting. It's so interesting to speak to someone who's lived that environment and has then moved into a different industry, but they still see the same issues that kind of prevail between both of them. And then to actually, a lot of people have brilliant ideas but don't do much else with it, but to actually take it to a book, I mean, that must just give you a buzz just sitting looking at that.
It does. And like you say, that, you know, when I use it myself, sometimes I like disconnect myself that I actually wrote it. Other times I'll pick it up and I'll notice little mistakes and I'll change it. But again, when people are still buying it, you know, it is sort of a like pinch me type scenario. It's like people buying something that I actually sat and wrote. It's quite interesting. And if you speak to Mickey, he wants me just to write more. So you never know what might come. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. That's what I was going to ask as well. Are you planning more down the line, or?
So I've got further growth with the Combat Journal. You know, it'll come to an app to coincide with it.
Yep.
A lot of people asked me, especially in the military, they were like, "Oh, we love it. Can you turn it into an app?" And you know, it just shows the problems that the military sort of had when they look at things as in like we can fix it with technology or anything, that they forget that the therapy is actually within the writing process. And it's through the writing that you're actually healing, you're doing that self-therapy. Whereas if you're writing in an app, you're not going to get the same results. But it ticks a box for them. But yeah, a lot of people are asking me to an app. So I've thought, you know, okay, use it as a friend, use it to maybe as a reminder to get you to journal. And I also want to create a community where people can feel safe to come and share and ask questions about their own mental health, about therapists, counsellors, sort of build that community up as well, because that was one thing I realised when I was doing a lot of research, that there was such a desire for community support, but a lot of people didn't really know where to go because it was a bit of a minefield. There's 101 different mental health Facebook community groups. So yeah, people were joining all of them but not really using any of them, whereas if you could create a unified sort of group that people know about, you might get a bit more success in actually benefiting. I'm hoping as well that when people go to join the army, they then have a wee bit of time with you beforehand as well. That'd be amazing. Gary, it's been brilliant.
Thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate it.
Anytime.
Thank you.